Welcome to the Mindset for Runners podcast, helping you to access and unlock your true potential as an athlete. Hey, it's Rob and welcome to this episode of the podcast, an interview with the awesome Chris Beavon. Chris lives in Brisbane with his partner and 2 young kids. He works full time and he manages to fit all of that in with training for ultra marathons. In 2023 and 2024, Chris ran the Kosci 240 kilometer ultra marathon. And what he did between those 2 years is a masterclass for all of us that we can learn from. He focused on the holy trinity of ultra running, which is nutrition, physical training, and mindset. And Chris learnt the lessons from 2023 and worked through the whole year on those 3 things to improve his nutrition, to improve his mindset, and to improve his training that culminated in a more than 7-hour personal best the following year in 2024. So Chris, if you know him, he's a calm guy with a huge heart. He's such a beautiful human, and I'm so happy to finally get him on the podcast so we can learn more about him, but he can also share with us all that he's learned and how he went about really unlocking and getting to know more of himself to bring more of himself to his running. And what he did from 2023 to not just Kosci 2024, but other races as well, really shows how much potential you can unlock when you work on yourself to get to know yourself and learn lessons from one race and take them into the next race. So please enjoy this interview with one of my favorite humans, and I'm sure you're going to grow to love him after listening to this podcast, the incredible and inspiring Chris Beavon. All right, I'm here with Chris Beavon, amazing Chris Beavon. So good to finally get you on the podcast. Thanks for carving out this time today, Chris.
No, that's an absolute pleasure. Yep.
It's been so good to get to know you over the last couple of years. But I want to start by saying you're in Brisbane and you are in the path of this cyclone, which is about to cross the coast. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge everyone in Brisbane and how are you going preparing for that?
Yeah, good. Just kind of battening down the hatches and getting prepared. Just tracking it and seeing what happens. I think, yeah, there's not much else we can do but wait and make sure we've got everything ready.
Yeah. Okay. Well, our thoughts to everyone up there preparing as we record this and probably as this goes live. So yeah, all the best to all our Brisbane runners and listeners. Chris, I want to dive into this interview, and what I really want to start with is your 2023 Coast to Kosci race. The first time you competed the Coast to Kosci distance, and I really want you to kind of take us through that race and kind of share the lessons, the highs and lows, and talk us through that 2023 Coast to Kosci campaign.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to put my mind back there after last year, after 2024. But it was, yeah, very different. I think the high of just being there, being accepted to run Coast to Kosci, that was just the greatest privilege to get that phone call, and be able to be there. I think for all the runners who were there that year, there was that very nervous drive down or travel to the start with the flooding. So yeah, just to get to start it, like the race directors figuring out how to run that race in that weather and the course changes at last minute. But yeah, the high was just being part of it, and I didn't, apart from finishing the race, there was no other kind of goal in my head. It was to get through it. Yeah, like you said, it's the first time I'd gone that distance. I'd only done 200-mile races previous to that. One being one of the qualifiers for Coast to Kosci. But yeah, it was a very epic adventure. I had been there the year before as a crew member for my mate Jason Richard, who inspired me to actually apply, because I've been following Coast to Kosci since 2013, I think. It was always just a pie in the sky dream that one day, if I could ever do it, I would get in. And yeah, him getting in that year before and being down there as a crew member just inspired me to go for it the next year.
I think a lot of people make their entrance into Costa Cosi through crewing, and you did crew Jason Richard in 2022. And what was it about his race and crewing there and kind of being a part of it that made you want to do it yourself?
Um, I think, like I said, I've been following the race for so long, and I knew a lot of the other runners as well through previous ultras. So, like, I've known Jane Trumper for she's how I found out about the race essentially. So it's kind of followed her racing it and all those years. So it's just getting down there in the community when you get to the check-in and seeing all the familiar faces, but just watching someone like Jace, who's been my best running buddy for years now, watching him achieve that and helping him get to that finish line, it's just an epic adventure. And just wanted to give it a go.
So good. In 2023, you mentioned the flooding the night before the race, and the race directors, Greg Wallace and Mickey Campbell, had to make a decision to change the course the night before the race, otherwise, it was going to get cancelled. How do you deal with something after preparing for a race for so long and the night before the race thinking this might not go ahead and then having to deal with the course change? How did you kind of absorb all that and show up on race day?
Um, I think, yeah, like I said, my sole focus, I had like tunnel vision of just getting to the end. So being flexible with everything else around that was part of my unofficial race planning. I don't think I really had a strong race plan going into it other than to finish. So when they made that change, it was kind of like, all right, how's this going to work? How can we make this a positive? And I was like, yeah, we had that little car ride to get around the floodwaters. I was like, all right, that's an opportunity to get a fresh set of clothes on, get some fuel in, have a little nap on the way over there, and get going again. So it was just making a positive out of it.
Good on you. I love that you said that it was your flexibility and it was all about the finish and getting a finish at Costa Cosi. Um, how did that race pan out? And can you tell us about some highs and lows?
Yeah. Um, like I said, the biggest high was being there, being on that beach at the start line with all those runners and the crews. It was just amazing. And I think the whole race was a high. um, but I had a really good first 100 Ks. Probably went out a bit fast, as all first timers do. um, and I just some of the big learnings out of it are like nutrition and planning and all that kind of stuff, which I just had none of that. It was kind of like I had all this food and stuff, and it's like just eat whatever I could, drink whatever I could. So it was kind of there was no planning behind that. So by the 100K mark and kind of where you hit the snowy way, I was kind of in a bad shape. My quads had kind of given up on me already. I was getting a few cramps and nutrition wasn't going very well. And it was kind of, the ability to run downhills and flats was really hard. So it was kind of lots of marching and power hiking, but that is one of my strengths. So it's kind of wasn't too bad. But then, by the time we got to Dalgety Hall, I was in real bad shape. The cold had got to me. Yeah, that section from when you get onto the highway to Dalgety, it was just rain and windy, and it was getting into the night, and the temperature dropped, and I just didn't prepare properly for that. So I was super cold and low on nutrition. And I think we got to Dalgety and went inside and had some hot soup and coffee, and I knew I needed a sleep. I'd already started hallucinating and falling asleep on my feet. And I could see the look in particularly Jason's face, who had seen me in bad ways in other races, but after the race, he's like, I thought you were done. And I have a very vivid image of his face and the look on his face. I was like, yeah, he's worried about me. But it was like I said, I had at no point did I think I was in bad enough shape that I couldn't keep moving forward. I had just tunnel vision to keep moving. And so I just, at Dalgety, I was like, give me 20 minutes to have a nap in the car with the heater on, warm up a bit, and as soon as that alarm goes off, wake me up and let's get going again. And that's what we did. And that was probably the lowest point was Dalgety Hall. It was I was hurting, I was cold, and I could see the team was a bit worried. But got out of there and marched through, and we hit the below Cahill, and the sunrise came up as we were halfway up that hill, and that just yeah, you hit that sunrise, and you got through the darkest part, and it was all go from there. So it's kind of the legs were hurting, and it was really a death march to the end. But once that sun came up, got that spring back in the step, and kind of could push through.
Man, it's a pretty cool story. One of the hardest things about Coast to Cosy is you've always got your crew car there, which means that any time you can pull the pin, pretty much, if you
Yeah,
can convince your crew to let you. So you had that opportunity at Dalgety Hall. You said it was never an option for you, but can you tell us a bit deeper into that mindset? How you, even though Jason was looking at you thinking you're done, you never considered it, or can you kind of break that down and what got you back out there after that 20-minute nap?
I just it was just I think I'd given myself that goal to finish, and it was just not. It wasn't even an option to stop. Like I just didn't. It was. It just wasn't there. It was like just one foot in front of the other, no matter what. Like if I had to crawl across that finish line, I was going to crawl. It was like just keep moving forward. I just didn't. There was no like yeah. There wasn't that option in my mind to stop. It
Really
would have
cool.
had to. It would have had to be some kind of medical emergency to
Yeah.
stop me.
This is really cool, Chris, and I think some people take something away from this. Once you make a decision, like it decision means to cut off, right? You cut off
Yeah,
all the other options. So, and this is what for you, it wasn't even a option that you'd ever given yourself. So it didn't
yeah.
kind of get bigger in the moment and tempt you. Mm.
Yeah, no, it was never there, and I think like I said, and I've never been in that bad of shape before and that dark. Like I've never hallucinated in a race ever before, and I was yeah, stuff was jumping out all over the place at me. Especially even after Dalgety was probably the worst. I thought I'd had some food and I had a bit of a bump, and I thought I was coming back, and then about 5Ks out of Dalgety, I was like, yeah, no, I'm still in bad shape.
Wow, can you share some of the hallucinations with us? Because I've never experienced.
Oh, I was just seeing like characters. Like I was focused on the road, so I was like, it's because the snowy way is not in great shape. So it's like all the line work's all broken and crumbly, and it's like there's just shapes and characters jumping out of me, and then you've got all the big boulders with the moss and lichen and faces and stuff were jumping out of that, and I. Jason even told me like, afterwards, it's like he could see me like flinching, and he was like, "What's going on?" And it was just, yeah, I was just completely out of it.
So things were
But
coming at you, and you were
yeah,
avoiding.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then but yeah, it's like I said, it's just I just had to keep moving forward, and I had that belief there that I could get to the end. So
Yeah, wow. Where does that belief come from? I know you said it wasn't ever a ever a choice for you, but where did the belief originate?
hmm, good question. I think it's yeah, having even though this is my first time doing that distance and coming out of Dalgety, you're approaching that 100 miles, so you're getting to the point. I was getting to that point where I was going beyond where I'd gone before. Um, but I think probably the confidence of having been there the year before with Jason and knowing what was left to go probably definitely helped knowing what was to come. I think if it was unknown, there might have been more of a chance of tricking my brain into stopping. But yeah, knowing what was left, I could just set those smaller targets of like, all right, we got Beloka Hill coming. Let's just get to the top of Beloka, and then let's get into Jindabyne. It's kind of like just step it out a bit and break it down. But this belief, I think, is just I'd put in the work as well. I'd been training like the first year going into Coast to Cosy, you've got to do your 100K qualifier and your 100-mile qualifier. So I'd spent the year building up to it and putting in training blocks, and had two pretty successful qualifying races with my 100K and 100 miler. So it's kind of, I had the belief that I'd put in the work, I suppose.
You bring up a couple of really good mindset points, Chris, like breaking a race down. First of all, you had the course knowledge from crewing the year before. But just to give that back to you, you still had 80 kilometers to go and you were busted and you were seeing things jumping off the road at you and your quads were sore and you were but still you were able to break the race down, even though for the last 40 were a grind up that mountain.
Mhm.
Still able to break it down and give your mind small chunks to work with instead of an 80-kilometer stretch.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I think, yeah, it's a bit of that flexibility as well. That might just be part of my personality of being flexible around stuff like that. But it's just trying different things as well on the fly, like the power hiking. My power hiking up from Jindabyne up the hill is definitely swinging my hips to try and just to change the muscle groups that were being used. So like, yeah, that stride change and um, just staying focused, I think, on those little like one hill at a time kind of thing. And then taking, like, I was just taking time to rest as well. Like I would do the 5K jumps with the car, and then I just sit down in the back and try and have something to eat. I think, yeah, that climb was particularly tough as well because that's when the storm started really rolling in. So it was kind of with the temperature swings that morning were insane. We were going from blistering hot sun to gale force winds, and I think the temperature differentials were like 10-degree swings at times. It was just crazy. So I was kind of having to go through all that, which in the end may have helped break up those hills as well a bit.
That's great. So these key points you mentioned, that like your flexibility in your mindset, knowing that you are going to finish this no matter what, breaking the race down. And also you mentioned looking back over the work you've done to kind of fall back on confidence, because sometimes our brain can trick us that we're not ready or we can't do it, we can't finish. But you were able to fall back on like a foundation of, well, I've done my 100K, I've done a 100 mile, I've done this great training, so I'm able to finish. It
Yeah,
shows your strength of mind when you put it all together.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, like I said, I think having that knowledge of the course and
Mm.
with Jason in 2022, I ran pretty much from Dalgety Hall all the way through to the finish line with him. So
Wow.
I had run that section, so I knew what was there.
Gotcha. And then take us through to the finish. You mentioned the terrible weather, then that they had to close the top of the mountain, so it was an inclement weather finish. But what was it like when you finally got there that year?
Oh, it was funny because I think we were just about coming into Perisher, so the last checkpoint before the finish, and it was, yeah, the weather was terrible, sideways rain. I had I've never used all my mandatory gear before in a race, and I had everything on, and it was still cold. um, but yeah, we kind of it was coming into Perisher that we got the message and the phone that the race had been called at inclement weather. And it's funny because at that point, what, you've got 10 Ks to go. It's not that much to get to Charlotte's Pass and then the 18 Ks up and back. And I was like, in my mind, we were summiting. So it wasn't a question. I was like, this is going to take us another 6 hours, but I'm going to get it done. And then when that message came through, it was a relief in a sense to know that the finish was only 10 Ks away rather than 30, but at the same time, it was, yeah, disappointing to not be able to summit. But my partner was part of my crew, and straight away as soon as she gave me the news, she was like, "We're coming back next year, aren't we?" And I hadn't even finished the race, and I was kind of nodding at her. I was like, "Yep, let's get this one finished." But yeah,
That's pretty incredible because most people would say this is the last time ever. I'm never coming back to this race when they're in that point. And I'm serious about that. I remember tall Jeff Everson, way back in 2011 or something, said to his partner Josie, "I will, if you bring out the contract to say I'll never run this race again, I'll sign it right now." And that was quite early on, but you were able to say, "I want to come back." That's pretty cool, Chris.
yeah, yeah. I just, I, yeah, it just wasn't even a question. I knew I
Mm.
wanted to do the full race, so it was kind of get this one done and start planning for the next.
Okay, that's amazing. Seriously, I'm blown away by that. So can you from there? So you finished 2023 with a whole bunch of lessons, positive and things to work on. And then take us through 2024 because looking at your results and getting to know you, you unlock something in yourself in 2024, and you had a great run at the Gazla, you had a great run at New South Ultra Trail 100 as your qualifier.
Mhm.
So yeah, can you talk us through your whole 2024?
Yeah. So coming off the back of Kosci 2023, I there was a lot of learnings from that that I didn't have until later in 2024. So, like I said, I knew I wanted to come back. So the first thing that clicked in my head was like, what am I going to do as a qualifier? And Noosa was the first race, and I'd done it the year before. And my running coach and crew at the time, they were all doing it. So one of my running coaches is actually the three-time winner of the 100K event there. Um, and I got a free entry into that race. So it was kind of an easy option to get the qualifier done. Um, and I had a really good training block after Coast to Kosci. It's funny, I had a few like minor soft tissue injuries going into Coast to Kosci 2023, like some I had a soleus strain in my lower left leg and a few things. And even at the start line, there was still that niggle at Coast to Kosci. And I was like, I don't, that was one of the worries in the back of my head that my body would actually just give out. um, but funnily enough, about 20 Ks into Coast to Kosci, the soleus just stopped niggling and it went away completely. And
Wow.
it didn't come back even after the race. And so I had a really strong training block into Noosa, with no kind of injuries or niggles, and felt really good going into the race. And I had a terrible race. Honestly, I had a great result, but a terrible race. About 30 Ks in, after the second checkpoint, I vomited everything. It was like everything out of my body. It was, and I thought I was done. It was about 30 Ks in. I was walking. I was like, I don't know if I have the ability to come back from just, I felt absolute rubbish. It was like vomited everything up and just kept walking and just kept vomiting. I was like, everything just kept coming back up. And it was a really hot, humid race, that one. But I just kept walking and I was like, all right, just walk it out to the next checkpoint, try and rehydrate and see how you go. And yeah, by the next checkpoint, it's a big climb, and so I power hiked up there. And by that next checkpoint, I was running the hills and I survived on tailwind and Coke. It's just Coca-Cola at the checkpoints and tailwind in my pack. And that's all I had all day for that back 70K. And I kind of just steadily chipped away at it, slowly, and slowly picking it up. And you come into Pomona and it's 30 Ks and it's kind of a net downhill, I think, from there. And I was like, my goal for that race was to go under 11 hours. And I was like, if I really push this last 30 Ks, I might go close. And that's where I tapped into something that I didn't. And some of the Coast to Cozzy realizations came out in that last 30 Ks. It was, it was obviously the nutrition stuff. I was like, I've got to figure this out after this race. But then there was the self talk. I was out loud talking to myself, and like just it was kind of that kind of, I don't know if it's um, positive self talk, but it was like telling myself just to toughen up and you can do this, like kind of with some inappropriate language towards myself. But I was, yeah, the whole way through, I was like, and I broke, and that's where I started to chunk out that last 30 Ks. I was like, all right, this is what time you need to do this next 5K in if you want to get 11 hours. And at some point in that last 30 Ks, I realized I wasn't going to make that 11-hour cutoff. But I was fine with that. I was like, just as fast as you can through this last section, just power. And that's what I did. I was talking to myself out loud. Luckily, there wasn't too many other people around, and just trying to take in as much tailwind and coke as I could at each checkpoint. Um, and I got to the finish. I think it was like 11 hours 20. So, and in that last 10 Ks or so, I think I passed a couple of people. So I ended up coming in ninth overall. So it was a top 10 finish, which was, yeah, I was absolutely stoked, but it was a really hard day out.
It's a great story. And okay, we have to zoom in on this because you were done at 30 Ks. You kind of walked a lot and got yourself back. But then there was that turning point with 30 Ks to go where you used
Yeah.
self-talk, and I'd love to hear more about that. and you actually verbalize it instead of using it in your head, you were saying it out loud. But something else shifted that you didn't say, "Oh, I'm done."
Yeah.
My race is done. You actually picked it up and ran really well and challenged yourself to run harder in the last 30. So can you break that down for us a bit more? There was a self-talk. You got on top of your nutrition with your flexible mindset, as we know, with Tailwind and Coke. So that, I mean, I know we'll talk about more of that later. But you did stabilize your nutrition and you did get your self-talk. What was it that really turned it around for that last 30?
Oh, I I don't. I honestly, like I said, it was just something a switch flicked. It wasn't a conscious thing. I don't think. Like my family was there, and they no, they weren't actually this year. They were the first. I did it the year before. So my partner was she was going to run the 25K, which is her first trail run ever. I was kind of thinking about her, and I had some friends who live in Pomona, one of my best mates, and they were going to come and see me come through the checkpoint there. But because I'd picked up the pace, so because they were tracking me, and they saw I'd slowed down, so they didn't expect me to come in when I did because I turned it around and picked up the pace, and so I missed them, and I was kind of like, I think running through that checkpoint, I was really looking forward to seeing some familiar faces, and then they weren't there, and I was like, I realized I had to turn it around. I couldn't like depend on that outside stimulus, and I was like, I needed something from in me to get to the end. And maybe that was the switch. It was like having that kind of brief realization of getting into my drop bag and having no other outside support there. Other like the race volunteers and the crowd are amazing. Like they were great, but it's seeing a familiar face is a different thing when you're in that kind of pain. Um, and I think maybe not seeing someone there was better than having them there because it made me focus on what I needed to do rather than seeking that external kind of validation. Essentially, it was kind of, yeah, it was an internal tick that I needed to flick. And yeah, it was, I remember running because you kind of go through the township there, and I was crossing the road with the volunteers, and then you kind of hit a dirt road, and I was like, all right, let's get this done, and just started chunking it out. Like I said, I just pick off. Sometimes I'd pick a 3K stretch, or it'd be a 5K stretch, and just slowly chip away at it. And I think it's probably about 15, 20 Ks to go when I started really like talking to myself because the legs were hurting, and I could see myself slowing down and having those little moments where you let yourself walk, and they kind of get longer and longer. I was like, all right, got to stop doing that. I want to get to that 11-hour mark, and kind of just flick the switch, and that's when I started the like self talk out loud. Yeah,
I can't tell you how much I love this, and I guess just what I'm hearing is that switch that you flicked was, as you said, you realizing there's no one coming to save you. This is all on
yeah,
you, and you had to turn it around. But in that moment, you didn't capitulate and walk it in and let yourself off the hook. You raised the bar and you found something, and you finished like with more lessons that you took into the next race, I'm sure.
yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, I kind of it was a big kind of kick in the backside around nutrition. I don't think I'd ever taken nutrition serious. Well, not serious enough, or I just wasn't aware of how serious you do need to take it in these races. Um, I think over the year before that, Tailwind got me through Coast to Kosci as well in 2023. I found that as like a hydration and just a base load of nutrition kind of in that year, but I realized I needed more than that as well if I was gonna like be turning the engine up that high for such a long time. You can't just I can't just rely on that. So it's kind of that was one of the big kind of takeaways from that. But then yeah, having that mindset stuff, I came out of Noosa kind of not quite sure what I was searching for, but like knowing that I wanted to do some more work on that. And funnily enough, that's how I came across your podcast um, and your mindset course. I think I'd honestly can't remember, but I came across the Pick Too Soon podcast, and it was your interview after your win at Coast to Kosci. And then I found your podcast, and I just started binging it, and that's where I realized that was a bunch of work that I needed to do. And I started with the nutrition, which was I reached out to the fight dietitians, and Lauren helped me out there. And then I was kind of the mindset stuff. I reached out to you. I think that was one of the things that I had to work on. Was like I've been always been so kind of like self-sufficient in trying to do everything myself and learn everything on my own, and that reaching out, even having a coach for the first time, like that was the 10 weeks before when I found out I got into Coast to Kosci 2023. It's the first time I'd ever had a running coach. I was like, I want to do this well and I want to finish. So I want to take it a bit more seriously. So I got a running coach. But then, it was like realization afterwards that it's not just the running aspect, it's all the rest of it that goes along with the nutrition and the mindset. So I was, reaching out to people who are best equipped to help me with that.
So good. I think of it as the holy trinity of ultra racing is the physical training, the mindset work, and the nutrition. So I'm interested. Let's go to the nutrition because that's something that failed you big time. And can you tell us the changes that you made to your nutrition and what you did with Lauren Nash there?
Well, yeah, with Lauren, it's kind of you go through the whole process. It's not just the race nutrition. It's kind of looking at your daily nutrition, your training nutrition, and kind of making sure you're fueling all that stuff in between. Um, and like the way especially ultra running is going at the moment, there seems to be a very much a nutrition explosion, and a very much a change in the scene of how everyone treats nutrition. Um, but yeah, I was working through all that stuff and just realizing that I probably wasn't fueling myself on a day-to-day basis enough to keep up with the demands of the training that I was putting my body through. So it's just changing small things, like I wasn't a big breakfast eater, and now it's kind of take on a good breakfast every morning. Um, and then just the snacking in between is like substituting out some of the junkier snacks for stuff that's a bit more um, fueling or nutrition, or is going to help me recover a bit better, whether it's a protein bar or pork crackle chips or whatever it is. It's kind of so I was working through that day-to-day stuff, and then the testing out different nutrition for racing in training blocks. So it's kind of I know early on when I was first starting out 10 years ago, I was kind of the only kind of nutrition on the block was the goo gels and that kind of stuff, and they always have made me vomit or dry heave. I just can never get them down. So I'd kind of turned away from using any gels, but I was kind of reintroducing those and trying different brands because there's so much variety now, and finding what flavors and consistencies and all that stuff works for me. And so it's like, there's a lot of in that kind of 3 or 4 months of just buying a few different things and testing them on different runs. And so testing stuff in the training. And then 2024, I only needed to do that 100K to qualify for Coast to Kosci. So it was kind of the rest of the year was open for what I wanted to do, apart from having to apply and get back in and be accepted to Coast to Kosci. So I selected just to do the 50K at the Guzzler in Brisbane. And I've never done a 50K race before. So it's kind of a shorter, faster race potentially. But the plan for that was always, it was a test run for nutrition. And then it ended up also being a test run for mindset. So it's kind of like a mini tester for Coast to Kosci. I even chunked out the race the same way I was thinking about Coast to Kosci as well. So it was kind of, I used that just as to test all the different strategies that I had kind of been working on for a few months before that.
Yeah, and I love that. The lesson here is Coast to Kosci was the A goal, and the Guzzler was the test. Like it's a stepping stone on the way. And
Yeah.
I hope people are listening to that because sometimes we can get caught up in our B and C goals and want to smash those. And it's really important to see those as a process, as a brick in the wall on the way to the A goal. And that's exactly what you did in the Guzzler. And you really you used it as a crucible to put all of your trials and Yeah, and just such it's such mature racing when you can treat it like that, and it never means that you're not going to perform amazingly in those B
Yeah,
races. It just means you take it's still that it's still a B race for you to be learning from and trialing stuff in rather than trying to maximize everything in every single race. So with that, can you take us through the Guzzler? Because great race, great event, and tell us how all of this testing went.
yeah. So with I think it was probably a few months before the Guzzler where I kind of reached out and connected with you on a one-on-one basis, and then you ran your first mindset for runners course that I was lucky enough to be part of. So I was kind of I'd been through all that process and the goal setting and preparation and different mindset techniques and race prep. But also, one of the other big changes I made earlier, well, around that same time, was my coaching. So, my love to my previous coaches, they kind of set me up for the first Coast to Kosci and Noosa. But I realized that if I wanted to do really well at Coast to Kosci, I needed someone who was more focused on that kind of ultra distance running. And most they're great marathon coaches, and they like obviously being a three-time winner of the 100K at Noosa, not bad. Ultra runners either, but they don't really train too many ultra athletes. And I kind of wanted that knowledge base. So I switched coaches around the same time. So now coached by Joe Ward, who's also a former winner of Coast to Kosci and amongst many other amazing race results. But I think him having that kind of race knowledge was just, yeah, a key to what was to come. But so my training block into Guzzler was a kind of a switch between my old coaching to my new coaching, which, yeah, was very stark contrast between the different styles. So it was interesting to see that happen. So it's kind of the Guzzler end up being a test of a different training approach as well as nutrition approach and mindset work. So like I said, I think the great thing about the Guzzler was I took away the idea of a finishing place or a time or anything. And it was all about the pacing myself and nutrition and working some of those different mindset strategies during the race and setting it up as a test for Coast to Kosci. So I kind of had broken it into three parts and had a different strategy for each part where it came to the first part of the strategy was to just run easy and joyful and I had all these little mini things in my head, like encouraging everyone that I ran with or ran past or who passed me during that first kind of 20K section of the Guzzler. And it was just amazing. It was great. I kind of ran easy and had a chat to a few people. And every time you kind of encourage someone or say something, it's kind of the feedback is just, yeah, just that real great vibe. And I think that kind of is exactly what I wanted out of that. And just staying on top of the nutrition. So I had me and Lauren had worked out a full kind of this is what I need to be hitting at each mark. So that was kind of chunking it up, and then the second one was a bit more focused, knowing the course as well because it's my home training ground. I kind of knew what was to come, and it gets a bit hillier in the second, like in the middle bit. So it's kind of a bit more focused. The mindset change was to run a bit more focused and um, still run easy, but kind of with more kind of um, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Just I've lost it. But yeah, it's just being particular about how I went about it, staying on target, hiking hills, running flats, kind of not pushing anything too hard. And then the last bit was just to see what I had left and race as much as I could. But I think I did have a few hiccups there with the nutrition. It was mainly with hydration actually. I kind of went through a checkpoint thinking there was another option, another section to get more water further along, but there wasn't. So I ended up running a longer section with less water than I wanted. So I got a little bit dehydrated. But I think the pressure of not having like an outcome goal for the race. It was just like take it a bit easier. There's another, you'll get to an aid station soon enough, and then kind of rehydrate and go from there. So I kind of let myself like ease back a bit just to allow for that. Um, but then I kind of yeah, I got to the last bit, and it's kind of yeah, it's 50 k's. Your legs are hurting. Um, Kind of the finish line's in sight, and I just started working through some like personal mantras in my head, kind of talking to. It wasn't so much out loud this time, but definitely talking to myself again. Um, and I was just observing people around me as well. I know there was, I wasn't sure what position I was in there. I think someone had told me at one of the checkpoints I was in like eighth position or something, which I don't think was correct at the time. But I could see the runner ahead of me, and I could see him continually looking back to see where I was. Whereas I think that's one of the things in the mindset. I was like, I don't want to be looking back ever in this race. I'm not worried about who's going to pass me or who I'm passing. But I could. It was just that interesting to observe someone else who's obviously struggling with that mindset stuff where they're kind of like being chased. I was observing it and taking it in and just realizing that wasn't me in this race. That wasn't part of my race at all. But then eventually passing him and getting to the finish line again. That's I think might have been same ninth overall, maybe. I can't remember, but yeah, another top 10 finish, which was I
Overall,
was
yeah.
stoked with.
Mm. And this is a great story. I mean, so I want to take back some key points. I want to ask you a couple of questions about them. Breaking the race down has been a real game changer for you. And even in the Guthrie, you broke it down. The first 20 was easy, encouraging, soaking it all up, taking it easy. Second 20 was more focused, more intentional, but still kind of, cruising and not pushing too much. And the last 10 was really using like self-talk strategically and your mantras and your out loud stuff. It's really good. And same with your nutrition. You had a target for each leg of the race, or was it? I want to ask you a few questions. With the nutrition, was it hourly nutrition, or was it again broken down through kilometers or checkpoints? And then can you tell us specifically what kind of nutrition you did use?
It was hourly based with a bit of flexibility there. So in the first kind of hour, 2 hours, trying to take in some more solid stuff. So I had some gels on board. So I had some Morton gels, but then I had like half a banana, had some dried mango, and then tailwind as well. So I was kind of hitting tailwind, I think every hour, trying to take in at least 750 mils, if not a liter, because I'm a heavy sweater. So it's kind of being Brisbane, even in winter, it's still hot. So kind of keeping that hydration up, but also getting the tailwind calories in as well as kind of that little bump, baseline bump. But then, yeah, topping it up with gels and some solid foods to start with, and then just moving to gels after that. So with one, I think I had one caffeine gel at 30K. So,
And
yeah,
that's something you worked out with Lauren about having solids early and then just moving into liquids towards the end.
yeah, yeah.
Great.
Which is, yeah, I don't, I think the next race I do, I'll probably move away from the solids so much. Like pre-race, I like how get up. I was up 2 hours before the race, had a really big breakfast, and half an hour before the race, I took in a gel, kind of like so prepping the body. And being a 50K, I know it's 50Ks, but for me, it just felt like it was a training run. Really, it's like that's my standard kind of peak training runs, and those being the trails that I run every weekend, it felt like a training run almost. So I wasn't too worried about running out of steam, but also yeah, wanted to feel good at the end, which I did. Like the nutrition work, the nutrition was really well. Like I said, I fell off on hydration just through a bit of poor race prep, and not investigating the checkpoints in course well enough. But that's a good lesson learned as well. But yeah, I got to that finish line and the legs felt good. Hydration, nutrition was back and good. I think I could have turned around and run the course again quite happily. So
Great. Oh, great, Tessa. Congrats. That's this. I love that story. Um, Yeah, and a great result. So tell us, yeah, what did you take out of that you built into your training block for Costa Cosi, which would have been what 4 or 5 months later, 4 months later.
Um, so I think some of the lessons learned from the first Coast to Cozy were definitely nutrition. So it was having some options, but also knowing what worked. So I still was playing with different gels. Like I said, there's so many different options. So I was still testing different things. And Coast to Cozy being the length it is kind of you can't. Well, for me, I can't just do the one thing the whole time. You get that flavor fatigue or that texture fatigue. And it's like I wanted to have other options. So I wanted to know what other stuff worked. So I was kind of constantly playing around with different things. So come Coast to Cozy, I had a whole range of things that I could take in. And even then there was stuff that I hadn't tried out that ended up being critical to Coast to Cozy.
Wow.
So, which were just last minute purchases while we're doing the shopping. So, um, that, yeah, the build up out of the Gosler was definitely just the focus on nutrition and testing stuff and making sure I knew what worked for my body. The training block, it just continued just building that base. Like I said, my quads really suffered. And I think that was the downhill running. Probably did more downhill running in that first Coast to Cozy than I should have, at a lot faster pace than I should have. And that's what killed me. Um, so yeah, I definitely worked into my training to put a bit more effort into that downhill stress to get that adaptation, which worked to a point, but still by the Jindabyne climbs at Coast to Cozy 24, my quads were still like this. Yeah, they were hurting. I don't know if it's everyone does that, but it's kind of I don't know whether I just need to put a bit more effort into that kind of resistance training around that. I think I was feeling so good in Coast to Cozy that I probably ran a bit hard after Beloka Hill. I probably ran a bit hard going down into Jindabyne, which was probably where where the quads kind of got hurt. If I would have pulled back a little bit, maybe I would have had more left in the legs for the climb. But yeah, so the training was just stuck to the plan and added in some of that hill stuff and the mindset stuff.
Well,
I
before you
think.
go on to that, I just want to ask you,
Oh,
sorry, Chris, to cut you off. You did
yeah.
mention that with coaching with Joe was different than the previous coaches. Can you kind of tell us what was different and how how you kind of adjusted?
Mm. So I'll go back to when I decided to change coaches. I actually approached you and asked for some recommendations. And so I ended up speaking to a few different coaches who are all ultra running coaches. And I could have gone with either of them. They were all great and had great conversations with all of them. But I went with Joe. His personality, where like the other two coaches, I felt I could see myself in them, and like it's just I saw a reflection of me. Whereas in Joe, he's just such a different extroverted personality, and I was like, he'll challenge me in ways that I don't think the other two would challenge me, and that was part of my decision process. But I also just with Joe, it's like I again reached out and asked if we could just have that like fortnightly check-in. So it was every Friday morning. Joe would give me a call and we'd just have a quick chat about what was going on, how the training was going, any mindset stuff, or any external factors that might be influencing the training. And it was just that constant kind of feedback loop was really important. But again, it was that reaching out, which again, it's something that I have to work on, is like thinking that I'm worthy of having that help or asking for that help. Um, so yeah, the training changed in just the really focus kind of easy running, I think, and the easy long running. There's so much of that zone two, kind of just plodding along for 90 minutes, and some of those running strategies of like the 13 minutes running, 2 minutes walking, and using that to work with nutrition and stuff during the training run. So it's a lot of focus around that. And then you still have your intense kind of 1 or 2 training sessions a week, but a lot of it was just that low, slow, low heart rate, slow running, like some of the 90-minute zone one runs can be infuriating, but it's the results, like just the improvements that I saw over weeks was just, yeah, I hadn't seen that before. So
That's interesting. A lot of people would be in that same situation. What kind of improvements did you see when you stuck it out?
it's just the ease of, like, once you start to run in, like after all that long slow running, the heart rate stuff, it's just that adaptation where you can, yeah, you can sit in that kind of high zone two or zone three in that higher, slightly higher heart rate, but it just, the perceived exertion is so much lower. um, I think that's important. I've been struggling with it coming out of this last Coast to Kosci. The training's been a bit harder, and my I feel like my perceived exertion has been a lot higher than the actual exertion. Because if I look at the numbers, I'm like, they're fine, they're totally fine, but it feels a lot harder at the moment.
This is really good stuff. I really like a lot of people listening to that who are frustrated running in that zone two heart rate. And just so people who don't know, zone two, can you give it an approximate? What would your what would you look at? What heart rate would you kind of slow down at if it is in the top of your zone two?
Oh, yeah, I suppose just the caveat that it's very individual, and
Yeah.
even it's even your watches and the algorithms
Yeah.
can not always be great. But I use, based on my watch and heart rate that I've been looking at, I kind of, my zone one is any, like I sit under 120 heart rate, and zone two is kind of that 120 up to high 130s. I try and keep it under around 135 max, but if it goes up to 140, I'm kind of okay with that. But yeah, and then kind of push into that 150 if I'm a little bit more intense, longer periods.
So as you're running, if it was creeping up to high 130s, would you stop and walk and let it come
Oh
down?
yeah,
Yeah.
those zone one runs are so frustrating, and there's some days where your heart rate just fluctuates a bit more, like especially in the Brisbane heat, like depending if you're running in the sun or the shade, and it's like there's been some runs where it's just been stop start because you're trying to keep that heart rate low. So it'll be like jog for a little bit and then your heart rate spikes, so go back to a walk until it comes down, and yeah, it's, some of them can be very frustrating, but
But
it's just
yeah,
sticking to the plan.
yeah, sorry. Yeah. You stuck to the plan and you
Yeah.
benefited from it. Huge kudos. I want you to take us through 2024 Coast to Cosy. We've built up to it. You've made the changes in mindset, nutrition. The training plan was different. Take us to 2024 and tell us how that went.
Oh, it's it's been, the reflection of it's been really hard. I've started writing a race report, and there's so much that went into it that I end up going on tangents, and I've just never gotten around to finish it. I go, well, if I talk about this, I have to talk about this is what got me to that point. I feel like I need to chunk it down in its own little chapters to finish it. But
Oh, let it all flow, mate. It's all
I
good.
like I think the build up was just starting just with the running itself. Like I said, I had all these niggles going into 2023, which I had nothing in 2024. No niggles. I had a really good training block going into Noosa. Had a I didn't have any plans until the Guzzler, so I kind of just was just going through the peaks and troughs of the normal training plan. My partner's from Hawaii, so we were over in Hawaii for a month. So there's the trail running group over there. I did one of their series runs, which was something like an 8K run, but it was so much vert. It's like 2,000 meters of vert or something. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
Um, and so it's just having a bit of fun with the training through that period, but also, yeah, just feeling great. The running was feeling great. No injuries or niggles. And then having such a great run with the Guzzler. So yeah, it's just and it was just that sticking to the plan, like trusting the process and trusting someone like Joe who has been doing this for so long and has run so many races, and you can see the success in not only his racing but his coaching. So just knowing that, the trust that he knows what works, which is, yeah, just been amazing. Like I've always kind of put myself in that kind of mid pack runner, maybe a little bit. I've always thought of myself as a decent runner, but never really gone yeah, and then to go from that to top 10 finishes for all those races this year or last year was just, yeah, it's kind of, it lit a fire. But
Wow, bit
then,
of fly.
yeah, and then the nutrition was, yeah, like I said, just playing with it and experimenting. But I think the mindset stuff was the key for Coast to Kosci 24. It was the the goal setting and what I wanted out of the race and what goals I was chasing, and also um, the race preparation. I, like you could ask Jason Richard or Ben, who was well had two Bens, but one of them fell sick on the Wednesday night before the race, so I had a crew of two. But the amount of planning that went into it, they all will tell you how much I had started from months out just drip feeding different things, whether it was nutrition or timing or logistics for the race or what I wanted from each of them as crew members. So they all had their distinct roles. So yeah, I suppose going back to the goal setting, it was like my main goal was just to be absorbed in the race and the place and the people. That was the key goal was to enjoy it and not suffer like the year before, fully anticipating that there was going to be suffering because it's the race it is. But yeah, just to enjoy the race and be absorbed in it. Um, that was the A goal. And then I had all the sub goals. Like one of the goals I wanted to go sub 30, and I didn't, but that's fine. I'm totally okay with that. It won't be my last time at Costa
Oh,
Cosi.
damn, it is.
um, but yeah, there's all those other little goals in there. But it's yeah, just to run easy and happy and enjoy it, um, and really soak up the community and the place with a goal. So that was having that really clear in my mind from the start, um, was key. And then yeah, there was that timing goal. So I kind of had in the back of my head where I wanted to be at certain times, but it wasn't a major pressure throughout the race. And I implemented that strategy of like telling my team I don't want to know where I am in the field. I don't know what position I'm in. I don't really want to know my splits or anything like that until later in the race. Like we'd kind of set Jindabyne to kind of flesh that stuff out. Um, so it's kind of yeah, just setting that up, which having those goals very clear and telling the team what those goals were as well. It was like there wasn't we weren't there to race anyone or anything. It was to let the run play out and enjoy it. Everyone enjoyed it. I wanted the crew to enjoy it as well. Um,
So good, Chris. I'm just going to pause there because a lot of people listening to this probably think they have to set a time goal or a place goal or some outcome or performance goal. Your A goal was to immerse yourself in the race and the people and really connect with that. And then the B goals, if you want to call them A, B, but the sub goals for time
yeah,
and performance goals.
yeah,
That'd be so refreshing for a lot of people listening to this right now.
yeah, yeah. It was like like I said. There's reflection on the race. As much as like not hitting the 30 hours was. There's a little bit of disappointment there, but at the same time, I like had such an amazing experience throughout the whole race. It was just, yeah, it fell away quite easily, and it's something that I can pursue another time. Um, and then, yeah, I kind of one of the other little things in the back of my head is being with all my races since finishing in the top 10 at Noosa is like, can I keep this streak of top 10 finishes going? Which, yeah, I was lucky enough to do at Coast to Cosy. So,
Secret goal that's in there.
yeah.
It's good.
um, but then, what
You
else?
mentioned the mindset. You're about to talk about mindset.
Yeah, the mindset. So I think the mindset stuff, like having practice it at the Guzzler was kind of just it just was easy. I kind of had chunked up the race, and I kind of knew the course of where I'd change those, like change the mindset a bit, and it just flowed really easy. I had in the race prep. was based a lot around learnings from the year before and the mindset stuff. So it was kind of like I had all these backup strategies for if that stuff happened again, and I didn't have to use any of them. It was like I thought a lot about the nighttime and sleep and hallucinating. Thought a lot about the weather and getting cold because in my 100-mile qualifier for the year before, I'd done the same thing, let myself get really cold and struggle through the remainder of the race. And so I was like, had all these things in place. It's like, if the temperature gets to this, make me, like the crew was like, you need to make me put on this gear. I don't, if I'm sweating, I'm sweating. I need that gear on or else I'm going to get cold. And they had all these little like pep me ups for the nighttime. I'd actually gone cold turkey on the well, not cold turkey. I'd weaned myself off caffeine a month out from the race, having that as a little bit. If I really need to get a pep up in the middle of the night, I'll be hitting my system with something it hasn't seen for a month. So I kind of slowly weaned myself off coffee and everything else. Um, and I did. I don't think I took caffeine until the early hours of. No, it wasn't. It was like going up out of Jindabyne is the first time I think I had caffeine. Like I didn't need it through the night at all. I was,
Wow.
and I had my kids and my partner write a jar full of messages, which I have sitting on my desk here, as little like if I needed something to get me going, my team could hand it out to me, and I didn't read them till after the race. So it's
Had all these things in place, just like as planning, but we didn't need the things that you've told us about. Do you think that merely having them planned was enough for you to relax into it?
yeah, I think so. And it was like I said, the prep and involving everyone in the prep was key. It's like I had three crew and they all had a role, a specific kind of task. Like Jace was my crew lead and he was kind of like my signs of life. He knew he was there to keep an eye on me and make sure that I was like on track. And if I needed that pep up, give me whatever I needed. Um, and then my other mate Ben Johnson, he was my nutrition expert. So he's like we had a chart and he was every hour ticking off what I'd taken, what I'd taken in, and making sure I was hitting all those key targets of yeah, how many calories I wanted and if I was getting the hydration I needed. Um, and the other Ben Wilson, who was meant to be my chief gear manager, he was tasked with making sure I had the gear I needed when I needed it. So if I wanted my cold weather gear and stuff, which fell to the other guys since he couldn't be there with us. But I had everything was planned. I had a folder with all the instructions and all the things. So I was kind of like, if this happens, this is what you guys need to do. So it was all there. I think the wheels they didn't fall off, but there was definitely a bit of a step back in only having two crew. In that, by the time you get through that night, everyone's tired, and so the tracking of the nutrition kind of fell away a little bit because they were sharing the running and the driving, and so it was both of them handing off stuff. It kind of just didn't work with just two people and everyone being exhausted. So that definitely, yeah, it fell away a little bit, but not enough that it mattered. And we were on top of it, so it was fine. Like all three of us kind of were just working well, and it just, like I said, I ran through the night with ease. Didn't feel tired once. Didn't hallucinate. I did. I had one vom. I vomited just outside of Dalgety, and that's only because I was talking too much. I was kind of taking a gel, and we were running and chatting, and I let the gel sit in my palate too long, and that's what made me throw up. Just like just having it sit on my tongue for too long. But it was fine. I kind of got it out and went again. And, like it didn't impact the running at all.
You just highlighted why this sport is such a team sport. I also want to highlight the kind of barriers you had to break through to ask for the help and to delegate to, well, Jace and the two Bens who ended up, well, Ben got COVID, but the other Ben,
Yeah.
how much
Ben
you,
was still there in spirit. He was
yeah,
constantly sending messages through, and yeah, it was
yeah,
still very much part of the team.
yeah. And for you to overcome, the need or the fear of asking and the fear of saying to people, this is what I want you to do. And so was that a bit of a relief or a release for you as well, when you were able to ask and tell them exactly what you need?
Yeah, 100%. It was not just the crew. I kind of, with family and work, it's kind of stuff that I had to reach out about, um, just to know, so everyone knew where I was at, what I was trying to do, and how I was kind of prioritizing various things in life.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd love to hear about that, Chris. We haven't talked about, so you work full time, you've got a, partner and two young kids. Tell us, how do you balance it? How do you negotiate time? How did you communicate that this is important enough for you to spend time on?
um, I think it's a bit of that flexibility, but it's all, yeah, again, just communicating a bit as well. I think my partner, she was part of the crew for the first year, and Jason and Ben, who were there this for 2024, were also part of that crew. So Ben Johnson and Jace Richard, they knew what I needed and what I wanted. They'd been there the year before and seen me suffer. And Jada knew how much it meant to me to get to the race and get to the finish line. So I think she was, yeah, more than willing to kind of let me do what I had to do. But at the same time, I'm very accommodating and try and fit everything in around everything. But I just had my priorities, I just was very clear in that, or probably for the second half of last year. It's pretty much from June through when I started doing the mindset course. It's kind of having that clear idea of goals, and values. And I think the value part was what it was. It was kind of, yeah, set up those, what are your three key values? And for me, it's my family and running and community. And obviously you have to work. But so it's kind of like I broke it down and I was like, the three big things in my life is working, family, and running. And I kind of probably bumped, if not running in front of everything, it's kind of equal with the family side of things. So I think I went through some work and business stuff probably five 5 years ago, longer now, where I was part of my own business and I exited that business because I realized, yeah, my life priorities were getting out of the way. So it was kind of, I'd already had that change in my brain of like putting family and that kind of stuff before work and trying to achieve that kind of work life balance and skew it in the life side. So I kind of already had that, but then it's like allowing myself that time to run as well, which is probably that selfish side of things, which, yeah, I'm not good with that thing, like allowing myself that space and time. It's always trying to, and I still do it. I try and fit everything in and around the family. I'll get up super early before everyone's awake. My family are pretty good sleepers and like to sleep in. So if I get up early enough, I can be home before anyone's awake and get that run in. Um, and then my work's not too far from home, so I kind of use the commute as a bit of a double. So I kind of can run home from work. It's kind of fitting that in. So it's kind of, and it was letting other stuff drop away as well. I think it's like I think we talk about like energy leakage, where it's kind of like you see those little things that you're spending time on or putting energy into that really aren't helping you progress anywhere. I'm trying to think of any examples of that, um, but yeah, definitely just prioritizing the running and putting it on par with other stuff and then allowing myself to do it and realizing that it makes me better in those other parts of my life anyway. It makes me a better family man. It makes me a better leader at work. Um, yeah, so it all kind of is intertwined, but yeah, just being flexible too. I think last year I was like doing lots of morning running. I was getting up and doing it. This year I've been finding it really tough to get up in the morning. So I've gone back to doing afternoon runs or lunchtime runs where I can fit them in and using that commute as a bit of the key running time really. Um, there's definitely a lot of guilt around the long run weeks where the mileage is high. especially on the weekends when you got to fit in a long run. It's because it's not just the time for the long run; it's the fact that after the long run, you're generally pretty bugged. So it's kind of the whole day really. But just allowing myself to do that, and like yeah, Jade and my partner just she knows on those days, which aren't it's once a month maybe I do one of those really silly long run training sessions. She just knows that day is going to be what it is.
This is a really good masterclass for everyone listening, Chris. You've used the word allow a few times. It's like you've given yourself permission. Can
Yeah,
can you kind of contrast how before you wouldn't allow yourself, and then what was the shift that you would allow yourself to do it?
I don't think it's not like set in stone either. I still struggle with it
Yeah,
even
sure.
today. Like especially yeah, like I said on the weekends where it's like family time and you don't have that work pressure, but you still got those running things you want to do. Especially on those long run days, it's kind of I feel guilty going for my long run and not being back in time for getting the kids off to whatever activities they got to do and all that kind of stuff. But just saying to yeah, Jaden, like, look, I'm doing this long run today, so I'm not going to be back for that stuff. I need you to do that for this Saturday. So I do yeah. Most other most other weekends when I'm not doing such a long run, I'd be back for it. But it's like this, I I can't get myself up early enough and get enough sleep to do the long run at the same time. So I kind of just yeah, it's having that kind of conversation and negotiation around it, and not and taking away that guilt and that time pressure around family, um, and being okay with that.
So good. And like you said, it's a tough conversation. It's one that so many people listening to this either are not having or are too scared or guilty, feel guilt. And so, but what you said earlier was that when you go running, you come back as a better dad and as a better leader. And so you've linked that it's not all negative and there are the benefits that come out of it. I really commend you for that, mate. Especially
Mhm.
when, you know, looking at how you've managed to build those long runs into family life and everything. It's not easy, and it comes at a cost.
I think also including family in some of it as well. Like when
Right.
you've got some of those long, slow runs, um, and even part of my training, especially for Coast to Coast, is hiking, power hiking. So some session, like some Sunday sessions, will just be an hour long power hike, and so we get the jogger stroller out, and the big girl gets on a bike, and Jaden runs beside me as I power hike as fast as I can for an hour, and it's kind of turns into a take the dog for a walk. It turns into a big family kind of event, and it's just nice,
So good.
easy.
This is so you've given us so many good strategies. All right, I want to finish this off with taking us from Jindabyne to the finish line of Coast to Coast 2024. Can you talk us through, speaking of power hiking, talk us through that?
um, yeah, like I said, so part of the strategy and planning for the race was not to know where I was
Mm.
at until Jindabyne. I didn't really want to know. And I kind of got there and we did a gear change, clothes change. And I sat down for a minute and got some fuel in. Um, and I kind of had a lapse in the mindset at Jindabyne where I didn't give up a bit, but I gave myself a bit of leeway and said, look, you've done great. And we know what's left to come. You're going to get to summit. Let's just get it done as best we can. But that wasn't the plan. The plan in the planning it was let's push hard, but I kind of took the foot off at Jindabyne and just yeah didn't I didn't implement the plan. But also, like I said, I think only having a team of two, I think the team didn't really push me that much either. Even though because I kind of as we were leaving, I was like, I don't care where I am. I don't want to know what place I'm at. Even though that's when I said I wanted to know it. But we got down to the river crossing and Jason just couldn't hold it in. He was like, "You need to know where you are," and that's where I found out I might have been in eighth place at that point, and I thought I was back in 15th. Like I thought I
Wow.
was still well down, and he said, "Yeah, not only are you in eighth place, but the first runners aren't even off this hill yet, which is that big 12-kilometer climb, which is no easy feat. Even if they were at the far end of it, that's still a long way to catch up. But I was like, yeah, my legs were pretty sore by then, and I'd kind of let myself take the foot off a bit. I know Jace was keen to go, but I didn't have that fight in me at that point. I was still like power hiking, taking nutrition, but yeah, the mindset that I'd planned wasn't there. So yeah, we did it. We power hiked. I ran what I could. My other Benny was out running with me, and we kind of were just chunking it down because yeah, I was struggling on the downhill runs, and he was just like, "All right," picked one of the street poles, and was like, "Let's run to that pole," and it's like just ran, had a bit of a walk. Um, I think one of the other things for the whole race was I didn't really stop. I had a bit of a rough patch at Rocky Hall at the 50K mark where it was getting really hot on that first day, struggling to take in nutrition. So I sat down for 10 or 15 minutes and just made myself eat and drink because I know I'd dropped off in that last hour. And Benny was tracking it, so he knew I'd dropped off. So we sat there for a minute and then, yeah, recovered really well. But yeah, the legs were definitely hurting. Nutrition was fine, but Benny was out running with me, pushing, and yeah, I just kind of was coasting along really. And then we got to Charlotte Pass and was going into the unknown again because the year before we'd stopped there, so it's it was super exciting to get through there and see everyone at the checkpoint and know it was just up and back is all we had left. But I wasn't doing a whole heap of running at that point, and I suppose, feeling a little bit defeated in the fact that I couldn't run. Or I wasn't running, and I knew I think I was in seventh by that point, so I think I passed. I can't remember who it was. Uh, it was Rob here. He was really struggling. I can't remember,
Oh,
but
well,
yeah,
Virgin.
and yeah, I was kind of yeah, a little bit of defeat, and I was like, oh, people pass me now. They pass me now, and whatever. Let's get it done. Get to the top and back. And so it was a lot of power hiking, getting up to the top, and then got to the summit and got our photos. We were silly. We stood in line. There was a bunch of tourists up there. We should have just pushed to the front and taken a photo and got out of there. But we stood in line for 5 minutes, I think. Got our photos. And as I was coming off, because they had some construction stuff up there, and as I was coming off the scaffolding, who was behind me? Maggie Hadley was behind me, and she was just coming up there. I was like, oh, here we go. I'm going to start getting past.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I started seeing a few other people on the way down, and no one had passed me yet, which was surprising. I thought I would have been past already by then, but Shaggy came past, Stephen Redfern, and he was absolutely motoring. And I'd run into the big dead tree with him back at the 100K mark. And I was like, and I started thinking, knowing Shaggy's history and all the runs he's done, and started thinking about all the other stuff he'd done, particularly the Transcendental race around the block in New York, and how much pain he must have been in doing that. And I was like, if he can run and continue to do that, I can run this last section. And I don't know what got into me, but I pushed through that pain barrier and just made the legs move. I just ran. I separated myself from my legs, I think. But it was thinking about Shaggy and how much he must have hurt and watching him run past. But I was thinking to earlier in the day, running with Maggie, she had said to me, because we were running together for a fair bit out of Rocky Hall, and she was like, I was power hiking up the hill. She's like, I can't keep up with your power hiking. I'll see you at the finish line. And I was like, oh, I'm sure you'll pass me before then. And I knew she was hot on my heels, and I was like, can't let her pass me now. There's only
This is
4
great
days to
stuff.
go.
Yeah.
And,
You were
and so
done. Oh, sorry, Chris.
no, yeah, I'm just going to say, yeah, I just let the legs open up. And you do kind of hit a bit of a hill, and it's like flattish downhill into the finish line with a few little lumps, but I just just let the legs turn over and just there was grunting going on, that's for sure.
Everyone listening, Chris is talking about the last 9Ks is all downhill from the top of Kosciuszko back to Charlotte Pass, save that little uphill that you said. And you hadn't been able to run down hills for a long time. So you really found something
Yeah,
by drawing inspiration from Stephen Redfern, Margie Hadley, and others that you'd run with. It's really cool.
yeah, I think, and yeah, like I said, at, coming out of Jindabyne, the mindset had kind of flicked off a bit, and then it kind of, I think, yeah, once because Stephen passed me just before that last little uphill before you coast down into the finish line, and that's where kind of he just set something off in my head, and that's where I was like, yeah, let's turn this around for the last bit, and also just that thought of the just leave it all out here. You've only got what 5Ks, not even 5Ks to go at that point. Just leave it out there, and that's it was that thought, and thinking about Stephen and Maggie. It's just getting it done.
Oh, I love this. I love this. And so then tell us about the emotions when you finally got there.
The funny thing was, I think Jason Benny were looking back because they could see them hot on my heels and they were getting close. They were going to pass me. And then that's when I started running. And so we got to the finish and I was expecting them to be hot on my heels, but I think I put like in that last 4Ks, put 10 minutes on them. I ran like a bat out of hell, but it was just, getting to that finish line and seeing everyone at the finish was just running through the banner in completely polar opposite conditions to the year before was just amazing. And just getting to sit down, and there was a bunch of the runners who'd finished, I think, an hour before me still hanging around, so sitting around with them and watching other runners start the last bit up to the summit, and then waiting for a few to come through the finish was just magic. You know what it's like, that finish line.
Great story, mate. And just to contrast for the listeners, like 31 hours, 16 minutes. That was your time. The year before was 34 and a half hours with the inclement weather finish. So we could pretty much add 3 hours at least onto that. So we're looking at a 6 to 6.5 hour PB on the previous year.
Yeah, well, I looked at the splits getting to Charlotte Pass, and it was 6 hours, 10 minutes difference just to
Wow.
get to that point.
Yep.
So if
Okay.
I would have had to do the finish the year before, it definitely would have been a bigger gap.
In the condition you're in, yeah. So
Yeah,
Chris, that's a great story, and thank you so much for today. Like it's been a masterclass of mindset stuff, how to take lessons out of races and work with what's not going well. And you've done that with your mindset, you've done that with your race preparation, you've done that with your like how you prioritize your life and the coaching with Joe. Um, I guess I want to ask you, is there anything you want to say to anybody who's listening, like any message you've got or anything you want to leave us with before we say goodbye?
I think we've spoke about it previously, but it's that it's a constant process, I think, and it's always growing. Um, I there's as amazing as Coast to Coast 2024 was. There's so many lessons learned, and facing forward to future goals now. It's applying a new set of goals and values and strategies that aren't the same to get to a new result. So it's like I was saying, I've had this corner set up with all my mindset stuff and goal setting for Coast to Cozy, and I've kind of been stumbling a bit this start of this year of how I approach this year of races and stuff, and kind of like puzzling stuff in with it. And I've kind of this week came to the realization that I probably just need to strip that bare and start fresh. And it's its whole own process. It's a new goal, new process, and it's that constant growth of all those little things that you want to do different, or some things you might want to keep the same.
But yeah, it's not about doing the same thing again because you've grown as a person and as a runner, and now it's
Yeah,
taking it to the next level. Chris Beavon, thank you for your time and for this awesome interview, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, definitely still feel like an imposter in this space.
Not at all. And wait till you listen to this back so you can hear all of the gold.
There's no way I'm listening back.
Oh, that's so good. Chris, thanks so much, mate. That was super.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for listening to the Mindset for Runners podcast. I hope you got something practical and useful out of this podcast, or something inspiring to help you get out for your next run. If you have a question about Mindset for Runners or athletes in general, please email me at robmason.run@gmail.com and I'll answer your question on an upcoming podcast. And if there's anybody you know who could benefit from the information I share in this podcast, please share it with them. See you next time.